The US and UK governments are calling on the Indian government to rescind its push to reduce the presence of Canadian diplomats in its country and uphold its obligations under international law. The Canadian government announced on Thursday that it pulled 41 of its 62 diplomats from India after New Delhi made a request for diplomatic parity in the two countries by October 10. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly said, in their unreasonable request for diplomatic parity, India would only allow 21 Canadian diplomats and their families to maintain their diplomatic status in that country, leaving others stripped of diplomatic immunity and vulnerable to reprisal or arrest. Officials from the United States and UK expressed their concerns with the recent development on Friday. US Department of State spokesperson Matthew Miller said in a statement issued on Friday that we are concerned by the departure of Canadian diplomats from India in response to the Indian government's demand of Canada to significantly reduce its diplomatic presence in India. Resolving differences requires diplomats on the ground. We have urged the Indian government not to insist upon a reduction in Canada's diplomatic presence and to cooperate in the ongoing Canadian investigation. Miller added that the United States expects India to uphold its obligations under the 1961 Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, including with respect to privileges and immunities enjoyed by accredited members of Canada's diplomatic mission. The UK's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office (FCDO) shares similar concerns, saying it does not agree with the decisions taken by the Indian government that have resulted in a number of Canadian diplomats departing India. An FCDO spokesperson said in a statement released Friday that we expect all states to uphold their obligations under the 1961 Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. The unilateral removal of the privileges and immunities that provide for the safety and security of diplomats is not consistent with the principles or the effective functioning of the Vienna Convention. Canada's Foreign Minister Joly has also accused India of acting contrary to international law and in violation of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. On Friday, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau also echoed those comments. Let's listen to what he said.
The actions that the government of India took this week are themselves contrary to international law. The government of India decided to unilaterally revoke the diplomatic immunity of 40 Canadian diplomats in India. This is a violation of the Vienna Convention governing diplomacy. This is them choosing to contravene a very fundamental principle of international law and diplomacy. It is something that all countries in the world should be very worried about. And this is putting aside the allegations we made of a serious violation of international law with the alleged killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil that the Indian government could have been involved in. This is a matter, putting that aside, that all countries should be concerned about. The government of India decided to cancel, to revoke the diplomatic protections of 40 diplomats working in Canada, working in India. This is something that has far-reaching consequences for the diplomatic world that I know many, many countries are very worried about. But it also has very real impacts on the millions of people who travel back and forth between India, as students, as family members, for weddings, for businesses, for the growing trade ties between our countries. The Indian government is making it unbelievably difficult for life as usual to continue for millions of people in India and in Canada. And they're doing it by contravening a very basic principle of diplomacy. This is something that should concern everyone, but it's something that has me very concerned for the well-being and happiness of millions of Canadians who trace their origins to the Indian subcontinent.
On the other hand, the Indian government rejected that it had violated international law in asking Canada to withdraw its diplomats so that both governments have roughly the same number working in each country. India's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said in a statement Friday that we reject any attempt to portray the implementation of parity as a violation of international norms. The comments came in the wake of a diplomatic dispute between India and Canada, which crystallized last month when Trudeau accused the Indian government of having a role in the killing of prominent Khalistani leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar in British Columbia in June. Trudeau said at that time that intelligence agencies were investigating credible allegations about Nijjar's murder on Canadian soil, which India has denied. Federal law enforcement agencies in Canada are working actively to investigate the murder, and officials have made calls for India to cooperate, Joly and Trudeau have said. David Cohen, the United States ambassador to Canada, previously told CTV News that there was a shared intelligence among Five Eyes partners that informed Trudeau's public allegation of the Indian government roles in the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Cohen added that there was a lot of communication between Canada and the United States about this without getting into specifics.
IPTV.